It started on a Sunday morning, one of those too quiet ones where the air feels thick with something unspoken. The sky was a flat gray, like the world hadn't decided yet whether it wanted to rain or shine. I was padding barefoot across the hardwood floors, coffee in hand, the smell of it rich and sharp in my nose. Normally, that first sip grounded me. But not that day. I was looking for my hoodie. Tessa always teased me about how I left clothes scattered around like a trail, so it felt ironic that I found her jacket first, slung carelessly over the arm of the chair in our bedroom. Denim faded, the one with the frayed cuff she never let me wash. She called it broken in, like it had history. Like it had secrets. I bent down to pick it up, just to move it, really. But the sleeve had this shape to it, like something was tucked inside. I reached in. And there it was, a neatly folded receipt, the edges crisp. I probably wouldn't have thought twice if it was from some corner cafe or fast food run. But it wasn't. It was from a restaurant in Seattle I knew too well, the Evermore. I stared at the name like it was trying to tell me something. The date, Friday night. The time, 8:17 p.m. A two-person meal, high-end. Appetizers, entrees, a shared dessert, and a bottle of wine that cost more than most people's groceries for a week. The total came to just under $300, tip included. My first instinct was confusion. We hadn't gone out Friday night. We stayed in. Or rather, I stayed in. She'd said she had a late-night edit session with a client who couldn't make it during regular hours. She worked in media, freelance photography mostly. That sort of thing happened all the time. But this? This wasn't a quick bite before a gig. This was planned. Deliberate. Elegant. I held the receipt for a long minute before walking into the kitchen where she stood by the stove, humming softly. She was barefoot, her hair pulled into a loose braid, wearing my college sweatshirt that hung oversized on her small frame. She was making pancakes, the kind with bananas in them, my favorite. She turned and smiled when she saw me like nothing was wrong. Like it was just another Sunday. What's this? I asked, not angry. Not yet. I held up the receipt between two fingers, not accusatory, not waving it. Just showing it to her like a question mark. She barely glanced at it before her expression lit up like she'd been ready. Oh, that was with Nicole. You know her, she just transferred to my team. She's been going through this messy breakup with her boyfriend. You should have seen her, poor thing was wrecked. Her voice had that casual warmth, a kind of emotional bandage that made it hard to argue. She flipped a pancake with one hand and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with the other, like this conversation wasn't the least bit strange. Like she hadn't just name-dropped someone I barely remembered. Still, I was processing. Friday night? That late? She nodded, already turning her back to me, reaching for a plate like this part of the conversation was over. Yeah, we went to Evermore. I know, kind of fancy for a comfort dinner, but she needed it. And honestly, I did too. I hope you don't mind. I figured you'd be wiped from the week. That part stung a little. Not because she was wrong, I had been tired, but because it suddenly felt like she'd expected me to not notice, not ask, not look. I didn't say anything. Just stood there while she stacked pancakes like little lies and buttered them into silence. Then came the redirect. She turned around, walked over, and pressed a kiss against my temple. You've been so tense lately, she said softly. We should take a weekend and go hiking or something. Just us. Disconnect. And then she walked away. Like nothing had happened. I stood alone in the kitchen with that receipt still in my hand, the pancakes starting to smell slightly overdone. The receipt sat on the edge of the table when I finally put it down. And it stayed there even after we ate in near silence, even after she started scrolling through her phone like she wasn't avoiding my eyes. Even after she went to the bedroom to shower. It sat there like it was staring at me. Like it knew something I didn't. I tried to forget it. I really did. But my mind wouldn't stop spiraling. She hadn't stumbled. She hadn't hesitated. Her answer had been smooth, too smooth. Not casual like you'd talk about grabbing dinner with a coworker, but polished, almost rehearsed. She gave me just enough detail to stop short of suspicion but left out just enough to keep me unsettled. And the thing is, I knew that kind of balance. I'd seen it in business meetings, in people trying to avoid giving too much away. It was the kind of explanation that closes a door gently but firmly. Except this one didn't close. Not really. That receipt had a weight to it. Not just in my hand, but in my chest. Because the Evermore wasn't where you went to talk about breakups. It was where people proposed. Celebrated anniversaries. Took people they wanted to impress. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I hadn't even heard of Nicole until maybe a few weeks ago. Just a passing mention, no last name, no stories, no photos from work outings. Nothing. I knew more about her barista than I did about this woman she supposedly had a $300 meal with. The smallest detail lodged in my brain and wouldn't let go. The receipt had been folded neatly, tucked into the sleeve of her jacket. Not crumpled. Not forgotten. Hidden. Why would you hide something harmless? I tried to rationalize. Maybe she didn't want it getting lost. Maybe she meant to throw it away and forgot. But the truth was, if I hadn't found it, she never would have brought it up. That's what gnawed at me. It wasn't just what she said. It was what she didn't. She didn't say who paid. She didn't say how long they stayed. She didn't mention what they talked about or whether she'd told Nicole about me. Just that I'd been tired. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But something in my gut, some quiet instinct that had been asleep for a while, was suddenly wide awake. I kept hearing her say I'd been so tense lately. And I wondered if that was how she saw me now. Distracted. Drained. The background noise to her more exciting chapters. She kissed me like punctuation, not passion. And walked away before I could ask more. That morning didn't explode into drama. There was no screaming, no confrontation, no accusations. But it cracked something open. Something small but permanent. A single receipt from a dinner I wasn't invited to. And a voice in my head I couldn't quiet anymore. The thing about suspicion is that once it gets in, it doesn't leave. It doesn't yell or bang on the walls. It whispers. It lingers in quiet moments, slipping into the spaces where trust used to be. After I found the receipt, it was like something rewired in my brain. I couldn't unsee it, couldn't unhear the tone of her voice when she gave that neat little story. Couldn't unknow how easily she'd smoothed it over. That morning, as the coffee cooled and she moved around the apartment like nothing had shifted, my mind opened a vault I didn't realize I had locked. And suddenly, things that once felt like noise started forming patterns. The kind of patterns you only notice when you're forced to look harder. The first thing I remembered were the texts. Tessa used to be the kind of person who'd read her messages out loud to me. "Oh my God, listen to what Madison just sent," she'd say, and then she'd laugh and share it. We had that sort of rhythm, the casual transparency that came from years of being in sync. But somewhere in the last few months, that changed. I didn't even clock it when it happened. It was gradual, like light fading at sunset. She'd start getting notifications during dinner and quickly flip her phone screen down. Or she'd step into the bathroom to check something real quick and take her phone with her. I chalked it up to work stress at the time. Boundaries. She'd told me once that clients could be pushy and that she needed her space to handle them. I believed her. But now? Now I remembered the way she used to pause before answering if I asked who texted her. How her answers had started coming slower, more calculated. "Oh, just work stuff," or "just Nicole again, she's still spiraling." The next thing was the perfume. She'd bought a new one about 6 weeks ago. I remember because she'd left the box on the bathroom counter and asked if I liked the smell. I did. I told her it was floral, subtle, something that lingered in a good way. Except, she never wore it around me. Not once. The bottle stayed nearly full, but I noticed it shifting position on the shelf. Like she was using it, just not when I was around. One night, she came home late, said she'd been editing a batch of Hedge *TS that were due the next day. I leaned in to kiss her cheek and caught a hint of the perfume. Faint. Faded. Like it had been worn hours earlier. But still there. I didn't question it then. Just tucked it away. But now it hit different. Like a breadcrumb I'd walked right past. Then there was the lingerie. I don't even know how I missed that one. A set black lace, elegant, not trashy. Tag still attached. I saw it in her drawer when I was grabbing a sweatshirt one day. It was the kind of thing that made you pause. Not because it was unusual for her to buy nice things, but because she hadn't worn it. Not with me, anyway. I'd even asked about it in that casual, flirty way. "That for me?" I said with a grin. She laughed. "Maybe for your birthday." My birthday had passed 2 months ago. It hadn't made an appearance. I didn't ask again. There were the Zoom meetings, too. I used to pop my head in sometimes when she worked from home just to say hi or drop off coffee. She used to smile, wave, and go right back to her call. No big deal. But lately, the door had been closed. Locked, sometimes. I found that out the awkward way, tried the handle one afternoon when I heard her laughing inside. It didn't budge. When she opened it later, she said it was a call with a sensitive client, very private. That she didn't want to risk distractions. Sounded reasonable enough. But since when did laughter require a locked door? And then, the moment that had been gnawing at me the longest, the one I'd buried under excuses and shrugged off because I didn't want to believe what it could have meant. It happened 3 weeks ago. We were at this little Italian place around the corner, the one with the checkered tablecloths and bad jazz covers playing on loop. We weren't talking about anything deep, just laughing about a couple across from us who couldn't stop checking their phones during dinner. And then she said it. She reached for her water and casually asked, "Do you think Daniel would ever do that on a date?" It didn't register right away. I blinked. "Who?" I asked. She looked confused. "Ha! You said Daniel. Who's Daniel?" She paused just long enough to matter. "Oh, I meant David. From the gallery. Sorry. Names are all blurring together." She laughed it off, but there was this flicker in her expression. Like she knew she'd slipped. Like she was already backpedaling. At the time, I didn't press. I just let it go. Told myself it was a harmless mix-up. I mean, people say the wrong name sometimes, right? But now? Now it didn't feel harmless. It felt like a glitch. A glimpse behind the curtain. All these moments, separate, innocent looking on their own, suddenly lined up like constellations. They pointed somewhere I didn't want to go. A trail I couldn't ignore anymore. The weirdest part was realizing how much I had been complicit. Not in what she was doing, but in pretending not to see it. I had built a narrative in my head, a version of us that I wanted so badly to keep real that I'd ignored all the ways it had already started falling apart. I kept telling myself we were just going through a rough patch. That we'd been together long enough to have ups and downs. That couples go through phases. But this didn't feel like a phase. It felt like erosion. A slow wear. The kind you don't notice until a wall collapses. That Sunday, after she left for her client shoot, I sat in our apartment alone. The silence felt louder than any argument ever could. The receipt was still on the table, still daring me to do something. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I walked into the bedroom and opened her closet. Not like a snoop, more like a man looking for answers. I don't even know what I thought I'd find. But there were things missing. A clutch I hadn't seen in weeks. Heels she never wore on regular days. A shirt that still had a dry cleaner tag on it but looked lived in. She had been preparing for something. Not just once. Over and over. And I had been the guy waving from the sidelines, thinking he was part of the game. That morning had cracked something open, but by that afternoon it had started to fall apart. Because signs aren't always neon. They're subtle. They're the faint scent of perfume when she hugs you a second too briefly. They're the way she turns her body away from you when she sleeps. They're the silences that once felt companionable, now stretched too thin. And when you finally start seeing them, really seeing them, you can't unsee them. You just start counting them. And wondering how long they've been there. I don't know what I thought I'd feel when it finally happened. Maybe relief. Maybe anger big enough to knock the wind out of me. But when it came, the truth didn't explode. It landed softly. Quietly. And that made it worse. It was a Tuesday, late spring, breezy, forgettable in every other way. I was supposed to have a client call that evening with a team out in Boston. They rescheduled last minute, and instead of logging into Zoom from my office downtown, I headed home earlier than usual. I didn't text her to let her know I was coming. It wasn't intentional at first, just reflex. I figured I'd surprise her, maybe cook for once, pretend like things were still working. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the sun had just dipped behind the trees, leaving this weird bluish cast over everything. The kind of light that makes familiar places feel unfamiliar. I didn't hear anything right away. The living room was empty, the hallway lights off. But there was a faint sound, laughter. Distant, like it was coming from outside. I followed it. Our sliding door to the backyard was partially cracked open. I moved toward it quietly, not because I was trying to sneak, but because something in me didn't want to disturb the moment before it showed its teeth. I stopped just behind the blinds and looked through. She was out there. Tessa. Sitting on the patio with a man I instantly recognized. Tall, with that too relaxed posture and a knowing smile. I'd seen his face before once, briefly, on her phone when she showed me some hedge *TS from a shoot she'd done for a friend. She said he was a tech guy, worked at a startup, wanted to update his LinkedIn photo. She never said his name. But I remembered the photo. I remembered because it was the only one she lingered on, the only one she smiled at in this particular way when she talked about the shoot. Now he was sitting across from her, holding a wine glass, legs stretched out like he belonged there. And she was leaning toward him, her face tilted up with the soft, open expression I hadn't seen in months. Not toward me. Not toward anything that had to do with us. Her smile was easy. Familiar. Her head rested lightly against his shoulder. It was the kind of closeness you don't fake. The kind that doesn't need to be explained. It didn't look like an affair caught in the act. It looked like two people who didn't feel the need to hide anymore. I didn't say a word. Didn't open the door. Didn't clear my throat or make a scene. I just stepped back, quietly, my hands still on the glass. There wasn't a need for confrontation. I'd seen enough. I walked back through the house, past the hallway mirror where her scarf was still draped over the edge, past the kitchen counter where my half-finished coffee from the morning still sat, cold and forgotten. I stood in the doorway for a second, keys in hand, then left. I didn't drive far. Just enough to be nowhere. I pulled over at a grocery store parking lot, engine idling, heart pounding, not in fury but in this slow, steady ache I hadn't prepared for. I'd spent weeks piecing it together, little signs, misplaced details, stories that never quite lined up, but none of it compared to seeing her like that. The way she tilted her head when he spoke. The way her hand rested on his knee like it had done that before. She wasn't cheating. She had already left. That was the part that gutted me. Not the betrayal. Not the secrecy. But the ease. She looked free. Not sneaking, not nervous, just at peace. And that was the confirmation I hadn't realized I feared the most. Not that she was with someone else, but that she had already adjusted to life without me. Quietly. Seamlessly. I sat in that car for maybe 20 minutes, staring blankly at the radio screen, not listening to a damn thing. I thought about all the times I'd defended her in my head. Told myself I was overreacting. That stress made people act distant. That I was reading too much into things. That maybe I was the problem. Maybe I wasn't enough. But sitting there, watching her laugh with someone else, all those doubts turned to clarity. It had nothing to do with whether I was enough. It had everything to do with how little she tried. Later that night, I walked back through the front door like I hadn't seen anything. She was already upstairs, the light from the bathroom spilling out under the crack in the door. I didn't say a word. Didn't ask about her evening. I didn't need to. She hadn't bothered to pretend anymore. And now, I wouldn't either. There was a shift in me that night. A line I'd finally reached. I wasn't going to rage, wasn't going to beg, wasn't going to unravel in front of her. But I also wasn't going to stay in this version of our life where I played the role of the man she used to love. I went to bed on the couch. The sound of the shower running upstairs was the only noise in the house. But somehow it felt louder than anything else. Final, in a way. Like it was washing something away. The next morning we made small talk over coffee like we were strangers who used to know each other well. She asked about my meeting. I told her it went fine. She didn't ask why I'd come home early. I didn't ask about her evening. And that was that. For now. But inside me, something had sealed shut. And for the first time since all of this started, I wasn't wondering anymore. I knew. I didn't confront her. That's what surprises people when I tell them. They expect some kind of explosion, a fight in the kitchen, raised voices, dramatic accusations. But there wasn't any of that. No big scene. No shattered plates. No ultimatums. Just silence. And behind that silence, movement. The truth was, by the time I saw her with him on the patio, I had already been grieving the relationship for weeks. That night just confirmed what my gut had been screaming for months. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a long time and I was just the last one to accept it. So I did what she had done. I started to disappear. Not physically yet, but financially. Practically. Quietly. Tessa had grown used to a certain rhythm in our life. It was subtle, but it was there. I handled most of the bills, not because she asked, but because I always thought it was part of the partnership. I had the steadier income, the longer hours. She freelanced. Took photography gigs when they came. Said it helped her feel free. I never minded. I believed in her work, her eye. I encouraged her to take trips to shoot landscapes or workshops she said inspired her. Paid for most of them, in fact. I saw it as investing in the life we were building. And I didn't keep score. Ever. But once I saw her with him, once I saw that quiet, comfortable in asterisk Macy they shared that used to belong to me, something inside me clicked. She had already let go. So I let go too. The next morning I called the bank. I removed her name from our joint credit card. Not with spite, not to be cruel. Just because it no longer made sense. I didn't feel like financing a lifestyle that I wasn't part of anymore. I shut off autopay on the streaming services she used, ones I never touched. I canceled her recurring monthly yoga pass. Removed her from the Amazon Prime account. Turned off her access to our Spotify family plan. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts, except this time I was the one holding the scissors. I didn't say a word. I let the absence speak for itself. The first time she noticed, it was small. She texted me in the middle of the day. Hey, did the Hulu account log out? Can't get in. I responded an hour later. Yeah. I made some account changes. That was it. No follow-up. The second time hit harder. She went to her usual Friday spa appointment, the one I'd been paying for monthly under my card. I got a text while I was at work. My card declined. Did something happen to the payment method? This time I didn't reply right away. I waited. I wanted to see if she'd follow up. An hour later, she did. Can you check? I had to pay out of pocket. Thought we had it covered. I wrote back. I've been reviewing our finances, tightening some things up. Still no confrontation. Still polite. But the undercurrent was clear. She replied with just a single word. Okay. A few days later, she came home and hovered in the doorway of the room where I was working. Did you cancel my Lightroom subscription? I didn't look up from my laptop. Yeah. It was under my card. I need that for work, she said. Her tone wasn't angry, just surprised. Like she hadn't expected the world to adjust around her. You can sign up again, I said. With your own. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, you never cared about that before. I care now, I said. She opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to ask why now, why all of a sudden. But then she stopped. She nodded and walked away. That was the shift. I had started to exist on my own again. Piece by piece, I began reclaiming the things I had unconsciously handed over. The rent, which had always come from my account, was moved to a new checking card, no longer shared. The grocery deliveries she scheduled and added fancy cheeses or oat milk to without asking. I stopped the auto orders. I started buying my own food and cooking separate meals. She noticed. And for a while, she tried to play it off. Made jokes. You're going rogue, huh? She said once when she opened the fridge and saw things she never bought. But her eyes didn't match the joke. She was watching me, realizing something was happening even if I wasn't saying it out loud. There's a power in silence. In no longer begging to be seen. She had been pulling away for months, slowly, subtly, without acknowledgement. Now I was doing the same. But unlike her, I wasn't hiding it behind fake smiles or late-night texts. I wasn't pretending. I was subtracting myself. Gently. Like backing out of a room you're no longer welcome in. One night, I caught her standing at the kitchen counter, staring at her phone. I was grabbing a glass of water, moving past her without speaking. She looked up. Did I do something? I froze. That was the first time she asked. I turned slowly. What do you mean? I mean, she said, voice tight, are we okay? You've been different lately. I met her eyes. Have I? She nodded. You're distant. Quiet. You barely talk to me. I wanted to laugh. Not out of cruelty, but because of how absurd it was to hear that now. After everything. After months of feeling invisible. I set my glass down. I'm matching your energy. She blinked. What? I'm just doing what you've been doing. I figured that's where we're at. Her jaw tightened. That's not fair. No, I said. It's not. None of this is. And I walked away. That was the only time we came close to saying anything real in those weeks. But even then, we didn't name it. We didn't mention the guy on the patio. We didn't talk about the receipt, the texts, the shift. We just stood in a house we used to call home and avoided the truth like it had claws. The next few days, she tried to bridge the gap. She cooked my favorite dinner, chicken piccata with lemon and capers, the one she made when she wanted to celebrate something. I ate it, said thank you, didn't say it was my favorite, didn't compliment the seasoning, just ate it like a meal from a coworker. The next day, a note appeared on my desk. I miss you. I miss us. Written on a piece of paper torn from her journal. I stared at it for a long time, folded it once, slipped it into my drawer without responding. Because here's the thing she didn't seem to understand. When someone withdraws from you emotionally, physically, in tiny daily ways, and you spend months trying to reach them only to get silence, you don't come back just because they blink and decide they want to try again. It's not punishment. It's reality. She had her chance to fight for us. She didn't. Now it was my turn to go quiet. And I was better at it than she expected. At first, she thought I was sulking. I could see it in the way she watched me from across the room. Like I was just nursing a bruised ego, waiting for her to make it better. Like I was hurt, not done. She assumed I was playing the game couples play after a fight. The silence meant to draw concern. The cold shoulders meant to provoke closeness. She was waiting for the part where I softened. But I didn't, because this wasn't a game. I wasn't pouting. I wasn't giving her the silent treatment to win anything back. I was quiet because the person I used to talk to, really talk to, was already gone. So when she tried to win me back, I didn't budge. She started small, like a person testing water they'd already poisoned. One night, she came home from work early, earlier than she ever had in months. I was on the couch watching a documentary I knew she wouldn't care about. She sat next to me, closer than usual, pulled her feet up under her like she used to. Hey, she said gently. This the part where I'm supposed to pretend I know what this is about? I glanced at the screen. It's about shipwrecks. She laughed, like she was trying to be charming. No, I mean, us. I didn't say anything. She waited a moment, then added, "You've been quiet lately." I shrugged. There hasn't been much to say. She didn't respond, just sat there for a while, pretending to watch. Eventually she leaned her head against my shoulder like old times, except it felt like someone else was touching me. I let her stay there, but I didn't lean back. She noticed. That weekend, she pulled out a box from the closet. Inside were old photos, cards, concert stubs, pieces of us. Stuff we hadn't looked at in years. "Remember this?" she asked, holding up a picture of us from Lake Crescent. Our first big road trip together. "Yeah," I said. "That was a good day." It was. She stared at the photo for a long time. I could feel her waiting for something. A thought, a flicker of warmth. But I had none left to give. She left the photo out on the counter like an offering. I didn't touch it. A few days later, she started making my favorite meals again. Not just one, but 3 in a row. Chicken piccata, shrimp tacos, the soup she used to make when I was sick. I ate them all without complaint, told her thanks each time. But not once did I say they were my favorite. Not once did I ask for seconds like I used to, because the food wasn't the point. It wasn't the thing that had gone missing. She kept trying, though. Handwritten notes appeared in places I'd find them. In my jacket pocket. "Hope your day goes better than yesterday." On my laptop. "Still believe in us." On my pillow. "Don't forget who we were." And the thing was, I hadn't forgotten. That was the problem. I remembered too well. I remembered what it felt like to roll over in bed and see her already on her phone, turned away from me. I remembered what it felt like to kiss her cheek and smell perfume she didn't wear for me. I remembered what it felt like to ask where she'd been and hear answers that sounded more like rehearsals than truth. She was trying now because she had something to lose. But when I was trying, she had nothing to say. That imbalance doesn't go away just because someone finally wakes up. One night, she walked into the living room wearing a dress I hadn't seen in years. A deep Berg *NDY thing she'd worn the first New Year's Eve we spent together. Back when we danced in our tiny apartment and counted down with sparkling wine in chipped glasses. I used to love that dress. She walked in, did a little twirl. "Remember this one?" she asked, voice light, hopeful. I nodded. "Yeah. You wore it the night we promised we'd never become one of those couples who stops trying." She froze, just stood there in the middle of the room, the smile draining from her face. "I'm trying now," she said quietly. I turned back to the TV. "That's the part that hurts." She didn't speak, just walked back upstairs. I heard the bedroom door close softly. No slam, no tears. That was the first time she didn't leave a note the next day. There's something sobering about watching someone realize they waited too long. That the emotional distance they created isn't a bridge you can just run back across. Especially when the person on the other side already started walking away. She wasn't used to this version of me. For years, I was the one who reached first. I was the one who soothed, who diffused tension, who checked in when things felt off, who forgave fast and gave more chances than I probably should have. But now I changed. Not out of revenge. Not to punish her. Just because I'd run out of energy. I didn't see her as the villain. I didn't spend nights fantasizing about getting even. I didn't secretly hope she'd suffer. I just didn't care the way I used to, and that's what really scared her. Because she knew me. She knew that when I stopped fighting, it meant the fight was already over. One night, I came home to a candlelit dinner. She'd made pasta from scratch. Real scratch, the kind where she floured the counters and rolled out dough with the wine bottle because we never bought a rolling pin. There was wine, too. Music playing low. The old playlist we used to cook to together. She smiled when I walked in. I thought we could eat together. Really eat. Talk. I sat down. Listened. She told me about her week. Told me she was thinking of shutting down her freelance work and applying for something more stable. Told me she'd started therapy. Just to work on myself, she said. No pressure on you. I've been thinking a lot. I nodded. That's good. Garrett, she said, finally using my name after a week of silence between us. I don't want to lose you. I looked at her. Not with anger. Not with affection. Just with honesty. You already did, I said. Her face crumpled, and for a second, I thought she'd cry. But she didn't. She just stared down at her plate, her hands trembling slightly. I wish I'd seen this coming, she whispered. I shook my head. No, you did see it coming. You just thought I'd never leave. There it was. That was the moment it finally landed for her. She had spent months emotionally drifting, confident I'd stay tethered no matter how far she floated. But I wasn't her anchor anymore. And now she was adrift. That night, she didn't follow me into the living room. She didn't try to sit beside me or leave a note on my pillow. She just went to bed alone. And I let her. Not because I was trying to make her feel what I felt, but because I wasn't going to rescue her from it. Some things you have to feel all the way through. Even regret. She broke first. Not in a dramatic way. No tears on the kitchen floor, no screaming. But in little, desperate attempts to rewind time. Sticky notes on the bathroom mirror. Old photos left out on purpose. Long texts I didn't answer. I read them, sure. Some were apologies. Some were just noise. She said she realized what she'd done, that she didn't want to lose me. But it wasn't about love, it was about fear. She missed the comfort, the security, the version of me that forgave easily. But that man had left the room months ago. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just listened. And when she asked, "Is there still a chance?" I told her, "Not anymore. Not out of cruelty. But because you can't revive something you let starve for that long." A week later, I moved out. No screaming match. No final showdown. Just a clean break and a new apartment across town. I started running again. Took my camera on long walks. Met Allison at a bookstore. Nothing romantic yet, but peaceful. 1 month passed. I saw Tessa again by chance, carrying groceries, thinner, hollow-eyed. She smiled like she wanted to say something, but didn't. I nodded, wished her well, and kept walking. No hate, just space. She had made her choices. Now she lived with them. Not punished. Just left alone with the silence she'd once ignored. And me? I was finally free.